100 years ago, something happened in a small, sleepy village deep in the countryside of Portugal. It was 1917 and World War I was raging. The communists were in the process of overthrowing the Russian Empire and the Tsar, and at the same time the controversial Balfour Declaration, which would lead to the creation of Israel, was being drawn up in the halls of the British Empire. Something occurred at Fatima, and we will continue to explore some of the events where we left off in our first film. In this installment, we will explore evidence of a fourth witness that was hidden for decades until Fina de Armada discovered her and contacted her. We will also look at the ancient matriarchal society that was in Portugal hundreds of years before the Romans. We will explore the links between some of the strange phenomenon that occurred during the so-called miracle of the sun and compare it with what some people have reported in modernity when they have had contact with UFOs. This is Fatima 2, Strange Phenomena. Most people are aware that the three children, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, claimed to have seen a small figure, or what they said was a lady, who appeared to them for 6 consecutive months, culminating in the so-called Miracle of the Sun event on October 13, 1917. However, there seems to have been a fourth witness which went unnoticed until Fina de Armada read her testimony when she was in the Fatima archives. Fina searched for this woman, and even though it was decades after the events of 1917, Fina found her in 1978. This is her testimony, told through her daughter, Frederica Claro de Armada.
Your mother discovered what can only amount to the fourth witness. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that and how did she come about that?
She was in the archives, and in the archives she found the testimony of the woman that gathered the money to build the first chapel. And in that testimony she said her daughter saw something.
Well, the fourth witness was discovered when Fina was reviewing some documents from 1917, and in those documents, and I believe these were from Father Formigão, who from the written testimony from 1923, where he refers this other apparition. Okay, so Lucia had mentioned that this girl also had an apparition. So that's when Fina discovered.
And from that testimony, my mother left the archives and went to find the lady.
Oh my gosh.
She was still alive, very old, but still alive. Wow. And she went to her house and she talked to them, to the force teller, and she told her a story.
Well, she discovered only in 1978, of course, when she started digging. But this was referred in the documents from 1923.
And she saw a little child.
Tell us the story, please.
A little being, like 7 or 8 maybe. Mm-hmm. She couldn't say if it was a boy or a girl.
She describes someone, she could not identify if it was female or male, just a small child, blonde hair, that was singing and laughing. And it was behind a wall of stones, so she could not see its feet.
This is very interesting because most of our accounts of hybrid children do indeed describe blonde, blue-eyed children with big eyes and a telepathic or a higher consciousness. Many witnesses come forward with accounts and sometimes memories of these very small children, conversations between them, and sometimes the children themselves will give them information. The reports mostly tell of meeting and interacting with them, but this has been a consistently reported component of the UFO phenomena.
Couldn't say if it was a boy or a girl, but possibly a boy.
Did it have long hair?
Yes, blonde hair. And she saw
let me stop you there. Blonde hair in Portugal is somewhat rare.
Yes,
okay.
It is.
So the woman is seeing something that really doesn't fit.
Yes, but she was a child also. 12,
she was 12, but she's older than Lucia though at that point. Okay.
Yes, but
so
she
then
was
what
a child.
happens?
She was with the cattle. She was managing the cattle,
Okay.
and she saw the child.
She immediately turned her head to the sheep and to check if they were okay. They seemed paralyzed. Again, she returned her head to check the being, and the being was no longer in the field. It was up on top of a bush.
In the same place of where the lady appeared.
By the oak tree. Same
yes.
tree, okay.
And the child was there, and she listened to a voice in her head telling her to pray and to go see the child. Go there. And she was scared, and since she had the cattle, she didn't want to go. So she didn't go, but then she came back, she saw the child again, but she was too afraid, and so she never went.
Like before, fears, Carolina Carreira, that heard the voice of the lady, commanded, come in, pray Ave Maria, come in, pray Ave Maria. The sound is heard inside it, not from the auditive.
I understand.
External.
So
auditive.
it's telepathic.
Yes, some kind of telepathic impression.
Kept looking at the sheep and returning to check what she was seeing. She was confused, she was frightened, she was afraid of the sheep, the well-being of the sheep, so she just went away.
And she told her mother, and her mother didn't believe her. So the mother asked Lucia to ask the lady that appeared, the little lady, if her child saw something else, if something else had been appearing in the previous days. And Lucia asked that, and the lady said yes, it was an angel.
It was Maria Carreira who went to Lucia's mother and asked for Lucia to ask the Virgin if she had appeared to another child.
Okay.
So it's true. The entity that appeared in Fatima confirmed to Lucia that the fourth stellar had seen something.
So in all this, is this in the official records or
Yes,
1917, 1919?
It's in the official records.
Okay.
And the official records go up to 23.
23.
The official investigation. And then this all disappears.
Portugal has long been a land of mystery. In the far distant past, thousands of years ago, the country was steeped in the worship of feminine goddesses. One such goddess, Mora, would seduce men and then kill them after getting from them what she wanted. Her male priests that served her were all castrated. This ancient entity was worshipped up until the Christian era. However, what we discovered was an amalgamation of this ancient cultic religion and Christianity. There were also serpent cults in the northern part of the country, some of which are active today. A temple to the Roman goddess Diana, who is sometimes pictured as a huntress wearing a short skirt, can be found in the south of Portugal. She is also depicted bare-breasted with the testicles of bulls hanging in rows beneath her breasts. Could this in some way link to the hundreds of apparition sites around the country? We further explore this idea by going to two sites where apparitions occurred. One of these happened only a day before the now famous May 13, 1917 apparition at Fatima. Is it possible that the old gods and goddesses are still lurking about, even in the present day wanting to be worshipped as they were in the past? We found our first site where a mute man known as John the Mute had an encounter with an entity or an apparition. Like many places we visited, the area of the encounter was set in a high place and overlooked the beautiful countryside below. The apparitions took place near a spring, which can still be visited today.
We are at the shrine of Our Lady of Aparecida.
Okay.
And Our Lady of Aparecida in the municipality of Barcelos, more or less 20 kilometers from Braga, in the north part of Portugal, was the very place that in 1702 Our Lady appeared to a shepherd called John the Mute.
But this is the first apparition site, and there are many apparition sites all over Portugal.
All over, many dozens.
And as we found out from our anthropologists in an interview that we conducted, that all of Portugal had deities which worshiped the feminine. Professor Campello, thank you so much for coming on the record with us. Before the Christian era, you have all these people worshiping the feminine, worshiping the goddess. Does that just translate? In other words, worship here, now we have the Christian era. Does what happened in antiquity with the worship of the feminine come into Christianity? So it mixes with Christianity. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
It's the same thing throughout the centuries. The worship of a feminine entity. It's almost like worship to the creation of life. The people are not intelligent enough to understand that these are different entities that they are praying to, but it's the same ritual that they are repeating.
You've got people setting up shrines or temples and worshiping the sacred feminine. And I think there's a correlation here between what these apparitions are, because they're everywhere in Portugal, and Fatima. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Lake, thank you so much for coming on the record. And one reason that you're here is because your expertise and your overarching knowledge concerning ancient goddess worship in the ancient world, specifically what is now the Middle East, but also what spilled over into Europe. Speak to that, please.
When you look at the origins of the mystery religions, Semiramis was forefront. She outlived Nimrod. She's the one that actually established it. In fact, she was the mother of God twice over when you bring in Tammuz. And so it established a matriarchal system within the mystery religions. All that's universal, all of them. So goddess worship takes preeminence within everything. Whether you're looking at the oracles of Delphi over the centuries, all of them, it was all matriarchal, which also kind of balances when the Apostle Paul was writing in Corinth. He kind of told the women to scale back just a little bit in what they were doing, because they were having to reorient themselves to a biblical model that is patriarchal.
When you look back at the history of the religions of the Mediterranean, starting in the Christian era and then working your way backward, you find that the religions of the Romans and the Greeks, the people who lived in the lands that now are Turkey, the Hittites, the Hurrians, the Luwians, and others, they all got their cosmology, their gods and goddesses from the ancient Near East, from Sumer in particular. We're talking the area around southeastern Iraq. That essentially was the cradle of civilization, right there.
Sure.
The cosmology of the ancient Mesopotamians, the Sumerians, was very male-dominated. But there was one very powerful female deity, and that was Inanna. Inanna was known by many names throughout the years. Inanna, Ishtar to the Akkadians and Babylonians, Astarte to the Canaanites, and in the Bible she was called Ashtoreth, Atar-Getes in northern Syria, then later Aphrodite to the Greeks, and Venus to the Romans. But you find that a lot of these gods and goddesses will sometimes share traits. They will be identified with other gods by different names, goddesses by different names. The thing about Inanna, Ishtar, Astarte was that she wasn't always a she was sometimes a he.
Okay, well, Mora was the mother goddess. She was literally that personified figure that all other goddesses would come underneath. Athena was very similar in that respect too. Athena, what's interesting with Athena is that she really exhibited a lot of male attributes.
So she's sort of hermaphroditic.
Absolutely. In fact, Athena has as many male attributes as she has female in many, many ways. I mean, she's...
So this is like, it gets into the interdimensional transgender entity deal again.
Absolutely. We have that flavoring where it's not fully one gender.
So it's gender fluid. Isn't it interesting that we're in modernity, gender fluid is the new old paradigm?
Right, but that fits along the aspects of re-enchantment. We are now returning to the goddess concepts that you've just described.
Another hymn to Inanna from about the time of Abraham, about 4,000 years ago, praises her for being able to change the male into the female and the female into the male.
What's interesting about this, with all the transgender stuff that's going on, it makes you wonder the origins of transgender. There's a term I've used, having spent time in Portugal, the idea of interdimensional transgender entities.
We have here an interesting book from the legendary invocations of Our Lady in Portugal, with around 2,000 invocations of the Lady under several different names according to the locality.
So these are apparitions that happen throughout history?
Yes. Not only entity apparitions, but also a little statues in wood, in stone.
Images in wood and stone.
That are found after the Reconquista from the Arabs.
Yeah, after the Arabs, the Moors were here. In some excavations that were done, they discovered small images, small statues in wood and stone of goddesses.
We are in the front of the fountain. That was the original spot of the apparition of Our Lady to the shepherd, John the Mute. We have this small pond and we have the big rock. And this fountain was the very place that was chosen by Our Lady to appear to John the Mute.
So there was this goddess that we found out was entrenched in Portugal in particular. Her name was Mora, and she had, the priests that served her were castrated priests. Speak to that.
You find that's also universal. Even in the time of Rome, the castration was part of the orientation into that type of priesthood. And it's because the male becomes subjected to the female being in dominance.
I was at a large pagan Wiccan gathering in the spring of 2017. What hit me, LA, was the constant reference back to the ancient deities, especially Athena, but referencing them as making their return, and the importance of them establishing temples and sacred spaces, specifically because the deities have already manifested to them and are demanding their temples, they're demanding their homes. What is ancient is now present, and what is ancient is becoming future.
I'm standing in Bedlam, Portugal, which is many miles away from Fatima. Why we came here is because on May 10th, an apparition happened here who said, in its own words, it was the bright morning star.
Here it says what the supposed lady said to the shepherd. Don't be frightened, it's me, boy. Tell the shepherds from the mount to pray always the rosary, and that men and women pray and sing to the star of heaven.
And why is that significant, the star of heaven?
Because in Fatima, the entity that spoke or channeled through the mediums, in the automatic writing that the mediums wrote on a piece of paper, it was signed Stella Matutina.
That's how it identified itself. I am the bright morning star. And this apparition happened 2 days before the May 13th apparition happened in Fatima. We're here at Barral, Portugal, and this was an apparition site that happened on May 10th, 2 days before the first apparition happened in Fatima. Guys, what do you weigh in on this? Why do you think this is happening?
There's a history of several apparitions. We know that Fatima is a big one, maybe because the circumstances allowed it to become a bigger, promoted sanctuary. This one is much smaller, but almost with the same message.
the star. Yeah, let me just drill in on that. That's what's important, because the automatic writing that we know happened from the mediums talks about the bright morning star, and this entity identifies itself as the bright morning star. What are your thoughts on that?
It looks like the same messenger, the same entity. In February of 1917, a group of mediums were receiving some kind of message. They wrote with an automatic writing from right to left, and at the end of the message it was signed Stella Matutina, Morning Star.
And it is signed Stella Matutina, which means the bright morning star. When you hear that, what rings in your head?
The reference to the morning star would certainly put this on this goddess Inanna, Ishtar, Aphrodite, Venus.
It moves it right into that column.
Yeah, and I would argue that she is the spirit of our age. You know, a phrase from the Apostle Paul.
The same thing from what we looked. The entity called itself or asked for a prayer for the morning star, or the bright star of the sky.
Manuel, what are your thoughts?
It is possible that it is the very same entity that appeared in Fatima, that talked to the mediums many weeks before Fatima. It is possible. But there is also local conditions, telluric conditions, connected with the characteristics of the landscape. So I don't know if it is the same.
There's really no way for us to know what we're looking at, except I find it very interesting that it hails back. It dovetails into that signature from what the mediums say, and people can draw their own conclusions from that.
They were telling about the fact that the woman Moor that would show up is always connected, or most of the times connected with the cult of the serpent.
Cult of the serpent, so there's a serpent cult.
Yes.
And that's active in Portugal.
Yes, a lot of representation.
Eu encontrei pelo menos 5 lendas.
5 legends.
Castro Laboreiro, uma das mais importantes, em que a Moura, a maior parte do tempo, está transformada em serpente.
That the Moor woman is most of the time is transformed in a serpent, because the serpent is connected with knowledge.
Oh,
as
yes,
well.
I'm aware of that. Sure.
So
that knowledge always comes with a price.
There were other strange events that manifested in that rain-soaked field in October of 1917. Some people reported that the clothes they were wearing instantly dried when the object, which flew less than 100 feet over the heads of the crowd, appeared. Still others reported strange skin burns. Car windshields blew out, gasoline spontaneously combusted, and a mysterious white substance fell on the crowd. Remember, in 1917, most of the people gathered had never seen a flying object of any kind. Were these miraculous signs from heaven, or the traces of something else?
Yeah. What did the people who were 100 miles away or 120 kilometers away, what did they think? What did they say about it?
They saw a bright object flying under the clouds. That's the problem, because it's under the clouds, not over the clouds. So
it cannot possibly be the sun.
Yeah.
Now, the people who were at Fatima during this event on October 13th, 1917, which has been called the Miracle of the Sun, named the Miracle of the Sun, they obviously saw something. There's no doubt about that. We're not disputing that. But we're trying to get to the facts. What did they see? What was actually there? According to the research that I've done, people were terrified at this object coming. Is that true?
Because in certain 2 or 3 times it was running towards the earth in a great speed, so people were terrified.
You know, one of the more respectable witnesses and articulate ones was a local school teacher, and she described the miracle of the sun as that the disc was blue, and that everything turned bright. A silver light was shining everywhere, and that it moved and it kind of it sounds like it dove.
there were people that were had some effects on their bodies, and not only the air was warmer, the clothes were dried, but some people had some, not burning, but some marks.
Red marks?
Red marks.
Red marks? Is that a fair statement? Red marks?
Yes.
Okay.
And so something happened.
Okay, there were reports of light skin burns. We don't know exactly how did people behave, or the aftermath of this flyby. They're just those reports. People referring light skin burns, feeling the heat of the object, just realizing that they were all dry. It had been raining a lot, and they were all dried. The land also dried.
Rural people, most simple people, was alarmed, very terrified, shouting in enormous ways, and of course some conversions of heretics, the agnostics, and people that were not believers in that same spot were confirmed by the reports. But we have also witnessed by neutral people. There was expecting something, but were not believers or non-believers. That's kind of journalist Avelino de Almeida that made an important report in the great journal in Lisbon, O Século, and later on.
That's from the newspaper.
Magazine, magazine Ilustração Portuguesa, that were full of good photos of the crowd watching the skies, the expectation before the movements, the sun movements. So we have some interesting records, but I think I always think if Fatima events could even take place in 2017,
a whole different thing.
Well, a lot of information. You can see what kind of information, instrumental of any kinds, of image, of registers, in filming, video.
There are many reports and accounts of heat or wind-related effects from UFOs or unknown craft. A quick example would be the 1980 Cash Landrum case in Texas. Betty Cash and Vicki Landrum were driving home with Vicki's 7-year-old grandson Colby. They witnessed an object that they could only describe as a UFO. When Betty and Vicki saw this object in the sky and coming towards them, they exited the vehicle, but they felt an immense heat immediately and felt as though their faces were burning. The car door handle and metal on the vehicle also heated up, and she burned her hand as she tried to get back into the car. There are many reports of scorch marks and burns left on trees and even the ground after an event or sighting. These reports are matched by wind or some sort of propulsion emission of these unknown vehicles. Wind or heat would certainly dry clothing quickly, but my money would be on a heat-related event because of the other witnesses reporting of burns at Fatima.
Many of the witnesses who were there describe hearing a buzzing noise. Talk about that, please.
Okay, this buzzing sound that people refer like a hive, it's referenced throughout the 6 apparitions from May to October. Especially the 3 children refer that when the being was speaking, they heard always a buzzing sound inside their heads. So on October 13th, there are many people also referencing they were hearing this buzzing sound like a hive. We don't know much more than that. Some speculation about maybe some kind of electromagnetic field.
A buzzing sound is an all too familiar and common part of the UFO report. Some witnesses describe the buzzing sound as a physical vibration or a sound they can feel around them in the atmosphere. It's a physical sound or buzzing.
There was also a very troubling aspect to the phenomena in Fatima, Portugal in 1917. Cars were completely damaged, windshields blew out, hoods flew up in the air. and gasoline spontaneously combusted.
Cars got damaged.
How were the cars damaged?
They stopped working.
The cars stopped working.
Cars stopped
Now you're aware, I'm assuming, that in modern day ufology, this is classic.
Yes.
That it short circuits the electrical system in the car.
Yes.
When a ET craft materializes.
Windows shattered also.
Windows were shattered.
Yeah.
Well, there are references from several witnesses that we don't know if exactly was during the flyby, but during this 10-minute period where this whole thing happened, there's reference to spontaneous combustion of gasoline, the hoods of the cars that just were ripped off, windshields that shattered. Very strange phenomena that people could not explain, and people were very frightened were viewing those kind of things, thinking that maybe could be the end of the world. But it was referenced in several witness testimony on writing.
Hundreds of reports detail damage to vehicles, property, and even the witnesses themselves. We believe some of these violent reactions are in response to propulsion escalation, and some even speculate these are effects from a physical dimension or an atmospheric change in our own physical world.
We've got the clothes that are being dried. We've got the ground that is suddenly dry, buzzing in the ears. We have windshields that are exploding. It seems like there's some sort of a energy force being directed over the crowd. Please speak to that.
I understand that probably this object may be involved in some type of energy. That's when it did the flyby or across people. That's exactly when through the path of the object. That's where they witnessed the drying of the clothes, the drying of the lands, the skin burns, the heat. So all these type of phenomena, the windshields, the hoods of the cars, the spontaneous combustion, probably was due to the flyby of this object. When it came closer to the machines or to the people, that's when all this phenomena were felt. So probably it was involved by some kind of energy, powerful energy, that when got close, it performed this phenomena.
Did they describe what the disc looked like?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yes, silver, not a shiny disc. Some people reported that it had lights in the surround parts, blinking lights.
Okay.
And some said the bottom part was wider than the parts on top. And there are people that saw beings inside, 3 beings inside. People at the time thought it was Mary and Joseph and little Jesus. It's the times, they had to interpret it in the way they knew, but they saw 3 little beings waving at the crowd inside.
When this object came down, there were beings in the object.
Yes.
Just talk about that,
Yes.
please.
Some people, a few people, referred that when in one of the descendants of the object, they spotted 3 shadows inside the object, inside the disc, and they interpret it as being Mary, Jesus, and Joseph. And some of the people even say that they were waving to the crowd.
Is it a fair statement to say that we have no idea who these beings were? Why would they be flying around in some kind of craft? Your thoughts?
Of course, it's so what Lucia describes in 1917 records that she gave to local priest Manuel Ferreira, and even afterwards to the other priests. She describes a very shiny, beautiful lady that was holding a ball of light to its chest, and wearing some kind of suit, a skirt just below the knee, and that would be heresy in 1917 because the ladies would wear dresses just to the ankle, or to the feet. And this type of dress was also it was very bright, goldish, and with some kind of cushion-like squares. It was very, very, very strange for that year.
Now, in you mentioned prophecies in the biblical prophetic narrative. It talks about that in the latter days, and this is a very specific prophecy. It says, in the latter days there will be lying signs and wonders. Mm-hmm. Now, we're not taking a step and saying that what happened at Fatima was a lying sign and wonder. We don't know that. That's why we're doing this documentary. That's why we're talking to people to do the investigation to try to find out. But it seems like something was there that was not necessarily what we're being told today in modernity. Apparently what Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta saw, this lady is completely different than these Mary statues with the crown.
Completely different. You know, these statues are interpretations from a statue maker that, not knowing what he could present, did a copy from another Our Lady he had on hand.
At another church.
Yeah.
Okay.
And from the beginning to our days, we had 5 different Our Ladies. So sometimes.
So it's evolving.
Yeah.
What happened at Fatima is now in the far distant past. Over 100 years ago, events occurred which are still the subject of debate today. However, there have been numerous apparition sites since 1917. This segment will explore more of the strange phenomena that is occurring in modernity. We will present real footage of so-called apparitions and ask you to determine what it is you are looking at. Can we really ascertain what these indistinct images of light are? You be the judge.
Say in 2009, Mary apparently appears at a Coptic church outside Cairo. And what we see are Catholics and Muslims together in the courtyard looking at 3 blobs of light, because that's what they are. One looks like Mary because it's got this blue thing that goes down like the veil, but it's just a blob of light holding or next to it is like a small child, which is supposed to be Jesus, and then you've got Joseph over here, and then maybe an angel in the background. And everybody's celebrating this thing. This is in 2009. Your thoughts?
I've looked into lots of Marian apparitions. You need to look at what they're saying. Now, officially, the position of the Church of Rome is you don't have to accept any of these private revelations. Now, to tie this in, for example, to Fatima, in Isaiah chapter 47, we're warned about a lady, a virgin, who does sorcery. And we also find out this thing has a short skirt, and it makes certain statements. The Bible says we should call Mary blessed, but it also says other people were called blessed, but it doesn't mean that we venerate her, think that God is sending her to give messages.
Or that she's the Queen of Heaven or something like
Correct.
that. Right.
It's like in China, there's one that is essentially the Chinese version of these Marian apparitions. So the Chinese will go to a Catholic church and bow down before a Marian statue on Sunday, and then a day or two later they'll bow down before this other Marian type thing that's not Mary but Chinese.
In China, there have been sightings of female deities, like large ones, hovering over fields with, hundreds or more witnesses going back for millennia. Kuan Yin, who's the Taoist, goddess. There have been sightings of Kuan Yin going back, for centuries, if not millennia, in China. And similar kinds of visions seen by simple folk, like especially Portugal, which had been a Celtic civilization before the Romans came. They were Celtic and they had Celtic folklore and beings very similar to old traditions that you will find in Ireland.
The many witnesses who were at Fatima claimed that a cloud moved in front of the sun, and from it the object, which many reported as a dull silver disc, appeared. First, we go back to our interview with Frederica Claro de Armada, who sources the original 1917 documents. She explains that a cloud moved in front of the sun and then something emerged from it. Then we have an eyewitness account from a man who saw a UFO disappear in the clouds in 2016. In his own words.
So the witnesses saw a disc, a silver disc, not a shiny disc.
Dull silver disc.
Yes,
Is that a fair statement?
Exactly. And they saw a cloud. The cloud came in front of the sun, covered the sun. Then the cloud opened, and the disc came from the cloud. And the disc went down and then up, back into the cloud, and then the cloud left, and they could see the sun again.
My wife was at work, and I was out in the yard. We live north of Austin, about 40 miles out in the country. And we're in the exact flight pattern from Mueller Airport out of Austin, Texas. The flight line comes right over my house. And I heard, and every day you hear these airplanes flying over, and they fly about 12,000 feet in the flight line. Well, I'm out there, and I could hear this plane flying over. But what got my attention is he started throttling back. And what happened is when I looked back, I said, that's not normal. I looked back and looked up in the sky, and there was this round object going into a cloud. And what happened is I believe that the pilots had seen the same too. And they throttled back so they either wouldn't have a collision or whatever, or they just taking a look at it. And half of it was in the cloud and half of it was out. Well, what astonished me is I looked at that, and it was a silver disc, kind of a dull silver disc. Pretty size disc. Then I looked and I waited and I waited and I waited, and it never come back out of the cloud. And I sit back, I went over to my porch, which my porch is 60 feet long. I have a country house that's got a long porch on it. And I sat there for about 5 minutes and it never, ever come out. And I thought, okay, Lord, that's all I need to see. I just got to walk in the house.
We have hundreds of reports from witnesses in modernity that claim the UFOs did come from inside a cloud. They detail UFOs using a cloud or a cloud-like cloak, for a lack of a better word, to move in the skies. The 2006 Chicago O'Hare Airport incident reports that a silver or metal disc-shaped craft at gate C-17 left a donut-shaped cloud after ascending very quickly up. The cloud is not an uncommon claim.
We will discuss yet another phenomena, which occurred in Fatima. It seems that after the disc-like object left the area and went back into the cloud, something fell on the crowd that has been referred to as angel hair. When people went to gather it, whatever the strange substance was, vanished in their hands. Is there a connection between the so-called angel hair and a similar substance that is left behind in UFO encounters today?
And describe this angel hair.
Angel hair. It was like some white hair.
People
exactly,
saw this.
But people saw it, and it was there were lots of them.
Okay.
It was not one or two. It was
now,
this went down over the people. So,
wow.
So and
it was a lot.
Yeah.
Whatever it was a lot. The substance fell from the sky. People would try to collect it, and it would disappear in their hands. Did you have access? What do you think that was?
I have my own opinion about that. First, I hate the name angel hair. We call it in Portuguese, of course, fibra alvina. That's come from Latin. Fiber albis, white fibers.
White fibers, okay.
White fibers. And these filaments, we had the opportunity to take the filaments in our hands. We studied as far as we could.
Where did you get the filaments from?
This last time, due to Francisco.
Well, in 2014, there were some filaments that fell southern Portugal, and this guy contacted one of our members from Exobaltics Portugal, and he was able to collect some samples. He sent it to me. It was placed on my freezer, and then we, through the university, contacted other institutions from the University of Porto to conduct the analysis. So right like 2 days after I got the samples, we went to the Institute for Molecular Biology, and there we conducted some initial tests. They were not conclusive. Well, back in 1917, some of the witnesses say that they saw these small flowers, small leaves falling from the sky, and these leaves would dissolve very rapidly. And we have other examples of these filaments falling, not only in 1917, 1922, 1959, etc.
These filaments do not tolerate the temperature. If you put it in their hand, they sublime almost instantly.
It just disappears.
Just disappears.
The angel hair or web-like material has been an anomalous component of UFO reports as far back as 1500s. In 1561, the well-known UFO Nuremberg event detailed the same type of substance, and this material continues to be reported all over the globe. From Fatima, France, Australia, Argentina, Sri Lanka, it's a real mystery and it's not going away. As late as 2016, MUFON investigated a reported event in which 2 witnesses detailed seeing a barbell-shaped object. Both witnesses saw this object eject a white fibrous material that fell to the ground and all over the trees. This material was visible about 24 hours before dissipating. An important side note, the Condon Report is a UFO study conducted by the University of Colorado in the 60s, and this was done for the Air Force. They too examined this angel hair or unknown substance. They concluded it's a fibrous material that falls in large quantities but is unstable and will disintegrate. They named it space grass and guessed it was aluminum chaff used by the military as a countermeasure for radar. Nothing more was revealed from their analysis. The theory is atmospheric electricity or a disruption will cause polarization of dust particles that form this mysterious material. Whatever it is, LA, it is almost always reported with unknown objects in the skies above.
Is it possible that, let's say, the people are here and something is coming in? I'm going to lead the witness, as it were. Something is coming in from well above, let's say, 150 kilometers, and is coming. Here are the people, and is coming down. And as it interrupts this space between 60 and 80 or 40 and 80 kilometers, something happens to the atmosphere, and then it comes closer. And maybe is it possible that whatever this object is, and it repeats from May to October, so we see this.
It's a possibility.
It may be that these filaments may be a product of these beings, that microorganisms that live in the upper layers of the atmosphere. And when an object, like in the 1917 event, 13th of October 1917, this supposed craft came and flew above people's heads. Maybe when it came, it disrupted these microorganisms, and they started falling. These filaments started falling above people's heads.
So, to kind of wrap things up, what's your takeaway? What do you think happened at Irene's Cove, Cova de Ira, 1917, October 13th? What's your takeaway? What is your final thought?
The dance of the sun and the flyby of the sun.
Right.
And that is quite mysterious. That leads me to think that something intelligent happened at Fatima.
I have always wondered if there were pictures of a so-called miracle of the sun. I thought that perhaps there would have been at least one photo taken as the sun danced for over 10 minutes on that October day 100 years ago. As I was editing this film, Francisco Correa gave me some startling new information, and we'll share this with you now. We now have photographic analyses from Professor Jose Machado from the original glass plate photographs that were taken on October 13th, 1917. To the best of our knowledge, this analysis of the glass plates has never been made available to viewers and researchers in the United States. The professor examined the glass plates, and to his and our astonishment, he found what can only be described as a round object in the skies over Fatima. He also informed us that a major network created a 6-part series about Fatima in one of the episodes, which featured Professor Machado and Fino de Armada discussing his analyses of the object in the glass plates, was canceled due to the volatile nature of the content. In other words, higher-ups deemed the information that Machado discovered at the sanctuary in Fatima too controversial to air on Portuguese television. We will show you the photograph that seems to reveal a round object directly over what was the site of the apparitions. You'll also hear from a panel of experts who will examine Professor Machado's work via a 4-way Skype interview. In addition to this, I am proud to announce that we are publishing Professor Machado's explosive material in his groundbreaking book. Professor Machado is the only person that we know of who has actually handled and analyzed the original glass plates taken by photographer Senor Benolio, who was present on the moors of Fatima 100 years ago. My first question to you, sir, is this. Did you have access to the photographs that were taken in 1917, specifically the one event, October 13th, 1917, in Fatima, Portugal?
The photographer was Benolio, a Jewish man that lives in Lisbon and works to some magazines and journals in Lisbon, and was invited to Covadeiria in 30 October to take some pictures. He takes almost 12 pictures, and the pictures are public.
What did you discover about the pictures? What did you see specifically in regards to what Raul calls the flyby?
These photographs are in the site of Santuário de Fatima. There are 4 photos that there is some problems. In the photography D107, there is smoke that elevates from the ground to the air and rapidly go to the left, and in the end there is a circular object that cannot be the sun, because the sun are obscured by the clouds.
Well, let me ask you something, Jose. Were you able to analyze this photograph, go in and blow up certain sections? This is on a glass plate. So are you looking at the glass plate, or are you looking at the photograph? What are you actually looking at?
I'm looking the two. In the normal photo, in the paper photo, there is the smoke and the little object in the end, and in the negatives, in the glass negatives of the photo, the smoke is in the negative, in the original negative.
So the smoke is coming up from the ground, is that what's happening?
Yes. This day there was a problem, because in this day it's raining, and it's strange that the smoke are in the local, in Covadeiria, by the hour of the apparitions. There are a smoke trail from the ground that elevate in the air. In the end, there is a little circular object. We don't know what is it. The object is in the direction of the arc of apparition. The arc of apparitions is there, and the object is over there.
There are clouds, and the sun is behind the clouds.
Yes. It's raining. The people are with the umbrellas, and it's strange that the smoke are in there. A fire? No, it's raining.
very strange. So it's not, these are not marks on the plate, these are actual, not stains?
No.
According to your research, this is actually real?
The smoke
is there
in photography.
Okay.
So this object is circular, it has no wings as a normal airplane would have. So
yes.
Is it fair to say, is it safe to say that it is a disc-shaped object?
Some people in local, like journalists, describe the object like dull silver plates.
Wow. What is your technical area of expertise?
I'm a professor of semiotics, and in semiotics we analyze photographs, films, and so on. And I have some formation in photography.
I guess the first question is, how do you determine if what we believe is an orb or a disc in the image is not some artifact on the glass plate?
I know that is not a spot. It's not a spot in the negative. Is intrinsic to the negative, like in photo D107. The spot is in the negative, and it's not posterior, made by the time.
So, Jose, what you're saying is because you handle the glass plate, it's not a chemical stain. It's intrinsic in the negative itself. Is that a fair statement?
Well, the image that we were all seeing, this 107, was it? Someone scanned it. So was it the scan from the plate, or from a print, or from like a copy of a print?
No, it's the original negative. The original negative in the glass.
Okay, yeah. So they scanned that, not a paper print.
No, in paper we have some copies in paper, and I think you saw the copy, a paper copy. But the negative, in the negative, the spot is there.
Okay.
I'm looking at the 107 negative right now, and there was some question about, it looked like there was a fire burning in the far right of the frame. There's some steam coming off the land there, and then there's kind of like a dark area. But to me, the whole right side of the frame up into the sky looks like that's probably some of the liquid developer kind of stuck onto that side of the frame more than an anomaly. Would you agree?
All the negatives has some spots of oxidations by the time.
Right, sure.
Okay. But the oxidation is essentially in the corner, inside of the negative.
Right, like it puddled when it was being developed.
Yes.
Would you think?
But in this photo, the smoke, or the spots of smoke, the steam is a little interior of the negative, and is not in the local of oxidation, normal local of oxidation.
But I think what we're all interested in is the object that appears in the sky about halfway in the middle of the frame.
I think there is some connection in the picture to the trail of the smoke and the spot, little spot in the sky. But I cannot explain what the connection is. I think is not the spots made by the time in the negative. I think is not, because all negatives are in good conditions, in very good conditions, and only the little spots in the corner are visible in the negatives. But I don't know how we can explain this problem. Only in glass negatives appears these objects, these round objects, and these objects are not spots.
What happened at Fatima is now in the far distant past. Over 100 years ago, events occurred which are still the subject of debate today. However, There have been numerous apparition sites since 1917. This segment will explore more of a strange phenomenon that is occurring in modernity. We will present real footage of so-called apparitions and ask you to determine what it is you are looking at. Can we really ascertain what these indistinct images of light are? You be the judge. We've heard from researchers, theologians, historians, and experts who delved into the phenomenon that occurred at Fatima, Portugal on October 13, 1917. Perhaps the most revealing evidence is the photographic analyses conducted by Jose Machado. Is this object a UFO? You'll have to judge for yourself. However, the photograph from the original glass plates seemed to point to the veracity of many witnesses who stated on the record that they saw a dull silver disc flying over the heads of the people. What was revealed to us in our research of Fatima differs greatly from the official story that has been told. Once again, I would like to state that we are not disparaging what people want to believe. However, there seems to be startling similarities between all of the phenomenon during the October 13th flyby and modern-day UFO encounters. What troubles me are the many so-called apparitions and sun miracles which have continued into modernity. We are told in the biblical prophetic narrative that Satan can appear as an angel of light. We are also admonished to test the spirits to see whether or not they are from God. That being established, it would appear that the author of those words expects us to encounter the supernatural. In other words, there is going to be deception, and we're to discern between deception and the real thing. In the clips we just showed you, you can see an absence of anyone testing the spirits. In fact, just the opposite is occurring. No one is rebuking first and asking questions later. Everyone is overcome by what they are seeing, and in fact, many are embracing it. The blobs of light are just that, amorphous images that can be interpreted in many ways. They certainly aren't a figure we can recognize. I would point us to the words of Paul the Apostle, who stated this almost 2,000 years ago. Satan will come with all signs and lying wonders. After everything we've explored in both of our films on Fatima, it would appear that the strange phenomenon may in fact be a harbinger of deception.
If you found this information interesting, you may be interested in some of our other books and films. In their own words, UFOs Are Real is a hard-hitting expose on the UFO phenomena from people who have had encounters and real-life experiences with entities, orbs, close encounters, abductions, hybrid beings, implants, and more. Go to www.thewatchmanchronicles.com. There's a subject that most people regard as fringe. Yet the people in this film have seen something.
I've seen a UFO. I've seen a UFO.
And I saw a UFO.
And I saw a UFO. And I've seen a UFO. A UFO.
People from all walks of life have come on the record in their own words, and their testimony is true.
Join me as we explore the folks who have had encounters in their own words.